O'Reilly.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back here to Kickin It With Knuble, episode 23. Mike, we are back. Got a little bit of a guest here, a good friend of yours, longtime NHLer, Stanley Cup champion with the New Jersey Devils. Played a little bit with the Flyers as well. Jimmy Dowd. Jim, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate it, and thanks for taking the time to add your day to talk with us.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me, guys. Let's talk some Philly hockey, huh?
Yeah. No, it's been, it's definitely been interesting. I think with the Flyers and, Mike and I, we've kind of talked about that all year. I know it's funny because recently, Jim, I was talking to Mike and I was watching a Bruins Devils game on NHL Network, and you were on the network. It was the night for Jacques Lemaire, and I was like, I was, a couple of days later, I talked to Mike, and I was like, hey, the night I saw Jimmy Dowd on TV, and they were talking, like, hey, we at some point, we're gonna have to get you on. So it's pretty good that we got you on now.
Nice, man. Yeah, that was a great night. Lemaire, man, he's one of a kind. So when they invited me to that, he was actually the guy that originally got me to the NHL full time. So I had to go to that one.
Yep, the mayor of North Jersey can't miss that one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
That's funny.
I mean, he created the 2004 lockout, sort of, with his trapping and getting you guys to trap and play it to a T. Combine him with Marty, and then Marty back there grabbing pucks, and you guys were a really, really hard team to play against. And he preached the trap, and then you won a shit ton of games. You get that core group. So he was onto something there, big time. And you're really onto something when they change the rules. You make the league change the rules and revamp everything. So for better or for worse, you're onto something good or something big at least.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't heard the word trap in years, man. But you know what? He's the one that came in and actually turned that organization around. They were on the cusp of getting turned around, but he came in there and listen, we had some really good players on that team, man. Whether it doesn't matter what style you play, when you win cups and you go far in the playoffs, you got to have some serious talent. I mean, we had some serious talent, and those rivalries, the Devils and the Flyers, were unreal back then. They still are. There'll always be a great rival. The Rangers, Islanders, Flyers, Devils, that little core group here in the Northeast. But Marty, with what he did, they did. I mean, they, like you said, they definitely changed the rules because of those guys. You know what I mean? But and that was a great night. Jacques Lemaire, like I said, to this day, I still think he's one of the best coaches ever. He can go to any team right now in the NHL. You give them some talent, they're going to be a playoff team. You give them talent, they're going to be a Stanley Cup contender. You know what I mean? I mean, his practices are great. He doesn't watch a ton of film. He just wants you to make the right decisions. Just go out there and make the right decisions.
Yeah.
Did he create? Was he the first coach of Minnesota as well?
Yeah. Yep. So he was played for almost half my career. You know what I mean? So
right. Yeah.
Pulled around for a couple different organizations. Then I played for him for 4 years in Minnesota, and that's why we were pretty good right off the bat. You know what I mean? My third year, they went to the conference finals, and it was the same exact thing though. Nothing changed from when he was in Jersey. The practices were, late, early afternoon, noon to 1, and the same style, same everything. I didn't watch a ton of film, just enough, to get you ready, which that's what I loved about it. I mean, towards the end of my career there, last year with you in Philly, I love John Stevens. He was a very good coach too. Man, did we watch film every single day. I personally think they should take film out of hockey. You're not allowed to watch film, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's he was great. He was easy to play for.
Right. And those guys, I mean, it's when mistakes, if you get rid of film, more mistakes happen. It would probably actually be really good for the league, right? To not study so much tape and just kind of let things happen and be surprised every once in a while. And I mean, back in the day, you had like 4 scouts and FORE scouts, that would go ahead and watch a game or two and then send, fax something back to the head coach about what they forechecked or whatever. But that's basically how rudimentary it was. And then video took over, and now it's like you try and eliminate all these mistakes and being ready for anything on the ice, where it's more entertaining when those mistakes happen because they turn into goals, and so now everything gets tightened up because nobody makes a mistake, but those certain, and the way coaching is now, you're not getting away with not doing film and analytics and all that stuff too. But it was a nice era, like to your point, where I was just like, boys, just go out and play. Here's a couple things, but go out and play. You guys play the game, and mistakes are going to happen. We'll live with them. Hopefully we outscore them.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and I get, like you said, I get both sides of it, but we went so far one way. Let's come back to the middle a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I get the whole clutching and grabbing, but now it's like there was more chances back then when you could hold guys up, get in guys' way. There were more breakdowns. Like you said, everything's perfect now, and everybody's looking to play that perfect game. And there's guys, they make one mistake, they know they're not going to play the next game. Like, one mistake, that's another thing it's a hurdle for guys to get over. You know what I mean? As opposed to then they're going out there playing, cautiously not to lose, as opposed to just going to play to win. And then the thing is, you can make a ton of money as a role player nowadays just by not making mistakes. So I get both sides of it. It's still the best game in the world. You know what I mean? It's still awesome to watch, and it's just the evolution, I guess.
So just kind of going off that, Jim, for you, like, obviously, like, I know you kind of played all around the league and whatnot, but is there anything specific that you can kind of talk about from your time in Philly, just that one season with Mike?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting how I got there, actually, man. I finished up that season. I was with the Chicago Blackhawks. Oh wait, was it the Blackhawks? Where the heck was I? Anyway,
it was around there.
I know, right?
Yeah. So I was 30. I was
coming out of that
Jersey.
lockout.
The Devils brought me back for a year. Here's the story. It's a great story how I got to the Philadelphia Flyers. The Devils brought me back for a year when I was 39. Because I knew they tried to trade for me the year before when I was with the Blackhawks. I ended up getting traded to the Avalanche, but I knew it came down to a 4th-round pick, and the Flyers and Devils were interested. And I asked Dale Talon, the Chicago Blackhawks GM at the time, I said, what happened with Jersey and Philly? You go, they bailed out at the 4th round or whatever. So I got traded for a 4th-round draft pick to the Avalanche. So right after that season, I finished up, had a great playoff run there. I personally called Lamorello myself, said, Lou, I know you tried to trade for me. I always wanted to come back and play, blah, blah, blah. I go back and play for the Devils at 39 years old. That season was over. We go to the 2nd round, and Lou wanted me to start working for him in the organization. I was like, man, I wanted to try to play again. You know what I mean? So I said, Lou, let me do this. Let me see what's out there. I won't do anything until I tell you what's out there. I knew the Flyers tried to trade for me the year before that, so I didn't even use my agent. I called Holmgren up. I got his number. I said, hey, Mr. Holmgren. I didn't know him as Homer at the time, because I didn't know him. And I said, hey, listen, I know you tried to trade for me last year. I said, I'd love to come play for you. He goes, all right, you know what, Jimmy? He goes, listen, we're over the cap, but we're looking at somebody, a right-handed centerman or journeyman that could kill penalties, take faceoffs, move up and down the lineup. We're looking for that presence, because that year, 06, 07, the Flyers came in dead last in the East. Dead last. I said, no problem. I go, okay. I just got to go back to Lou and tell him what's up. Like I said, I'm not talking to anybody. He goes, listen, we're over the cap. If you come to training camp and do what you do, I'll get you a contract. Don't worry about it. And I was like, all right, no problem. I'm not talking to anybody else. I go back and I call Lamorello. He goes, what? Flyers? Hold on. Don't do anything. Excuse me. So for like 2 or 3 weeks, Lou's trying to figure it out. Holmgren's calling me. I said, hold on. I got to give me 5 more days. And then he's finally because he was looking at Mike Eastwood and somebody else that was journeyman right-handed shot. And I finally said to Lou, I gotta give Homer an answer. He goes, Jimmy, you know what? We just can't do anything, blah, blah, blah. But, whenever you're done, you always got a job here. You're more than welcome. I said, no problem. Called Homer up. I said, all right, I'm coming to camp. I go to training camp, and I made the team, and, had a great training camp and made the team and signed a 1-year deal and had an amazing year. That year was awesome. One of the best years I've ever had in hockey. I grew up in Brick, New Jersey, which is about an hour and 10 minutes, east of Philly. Hated the Flyers growing up. You know what I mean? Up in our area, everybody was a Ranger fan. Then the Devils
Right.
moved to Jersey when I was 82. I was 13 years old. I was like, oh, this is great. I'll become a Devils fan. But absolutely hated the Flyers growing up. And my dad, he was so pissed. He's like, oh, you mean the Flyers? Come on. But he got used to it like real quick,
Yeah. That's
So I
funny.
go to
You're like, Dad, it's a
Yeah,
job. I need a job, Dad. Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
team was great, man. It was so much fun. I mean, like I said, John Stevens was the coach. Jack McElhargy was the other assistant.
Mhm.
Terry
Yeah.
Murray, right? Joey Mullen did the power play. And we just had a
Yeah.
group of
Yeah.
guys, the whole core group with Carter, Richards. We had a great group of young guys, middle-aged guys, and then we had, noobs. We had Jason Smith. We had Hatcher, myself. It was just a great mixture.
Yeah.
And we ended up going to the conference finals, 5 games against the Penguins. You just had a couple major injuries going into that series.
Yep.
Actually, funny, I was 40 years old. I turned 40, just about turning 41. And I came back to training camp again at 41, tried to make the team, but it didn't work out. And I really didn't work out that hard that summer. And I remember Holmgren calls me and he goes, Jimmy. Yeah. I said, no problem, Homer. I went right from the Flyer skate zone. My oldest son, Jimmy, just started playing mites. He was in a tournament at Iceline. I went right from there to start coaching Jimmy. So it was a pretty good story. But I loved every second of playing for the Flyers, man. It was so the practice rink, Ed Schneider was, still around. I mean, just the way they treated everybody, man. I mean, if you look at how many guys only played there for 1 year and they're living in South Jersey still, it's unbelievable. That says something for the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was good. I remember that. I think the main thing I remember was, you're talking about you lived an hour and a half away, but you were like, you weren't going to sign like a lease in town or whatever. And you see you out in the parking lot. You had like, I guess it would be akin to like a PGA golfer, but you had this, like, I think you were driving, maybe it was like a Toyota, what was the truck, a Land Cruiser or something, but you had a back end that would open up and you had like shelves with shirts and you were just making it work, man. You had like pull out drawers, like making it work and storing clothes in there. It was like you had a moving, you had a wardrobe closet that was just driving around town. And then I think you stayed at a buddy's house or something too. You had a buddy down there and crashed on somebody's couch.
Yeah, I had the best of both worlds. So I'm 40 years old, right? My 2 young boys were at my hometown back here living, and I was actually an hour and 10 minutes to the Voorhees skate zone, and like an hour and 15 to the Flyers rink. So, and my oldest brother, Pete, his best friend lived in Sewell, like 12 miles from Voorhees.
Mm-hmm.
I'd stay with him if I had to stay with him, but if we come back from a road trip, I would stay with Upshaw. So I had the best of both worlds my last year.
I don't know. It was Scotty. That's funny. Yeah, that's great.
They kept me young, you know what I mean? So I really did have the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Your wife was like, you're staying with Upshaw again?
Oh, it's too funny, man. But what a cast of characters, man. Good freaking.
Yeah.
We were freaking loaded, man. It was great.
Yeah.
It was a good team. Yeah. And talk about those younger guys. Like, it was like Lupul, Upshaw, Scotty Hartnell, coming in there. And
Lupul.
Carter and Richards were kind of taking over the team. Yeah. That was a good time to be in there. And being, again, I could tell you're super proud to make it to 40. I made it till I was 40 also, and I was like, that becomes a bit of a game at the end, trying to make it and trying to get along. You kind of learn to deal with, like, it's not age discrimination for lack of a better term, but it kind of is, and I would do things. I would shave, like I'd make sure they didn't see any gray on my face. I would like make sure, like, I think on my sideburns, I'd be like trying to like cut, like keep it tight so you couldn't quite see it all, and now you look at like Ovi and, he's 30, whatever, 38, 39. He's great. And he's been great for years, but, obviously he doesn't, he's got the beard to go with it. Big silver fox out there. But it's funny. It becomes a game when you're 40, trying to like stay fit and hide your gray and all that stuff. You don't want to give them a reason when you play. Should your play dip a little bit?
Yeah.
You don't want to give him a reason.
No. And you know what it was? Like Kevin Dean's one of my best friends in hockey, and he retired when he was like 36, 37, and he could have played another year, but he's like, I'm ready to retire. And I'll never forget him telling me when I was 37, 38 years old, he's like, Jimmy, he goes, I'm telling you right now, if you play till all 30, because there was 30 teams at the time, you play till every team Every one of them doesn't give you a contract, because I thought I was ready to retire. He goes, I'm telling you right now, when you're done with the NHL, you're done. And I look back on that. I could have played one more year, and I regret it now because it's the freaking NHL, man. So I'm telling you, play as long as you can. As long as somebody's going to sign you, you keep playing.
Yeah.
I'll let get that advice.
You hear that from lots of people. Yeah. Dean Evison, who's coaching Columbus Blue Jackets now. He's assistant in Washington, and we were getting in the late 30s there, and he said the same thing. He said, just keep playing as long as you can, and then if you do get on the coaching side of things, which, I did in Grand Rapids a little bit in the American League, and you have some veteran guys that are really in crossroads, right? So that, that league, you only have 6 vets on your team, and, they can't play in the lineup and stuff like that. And some of them are in crossroads. They're like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Dominic Shine, the nice story with the Red Wings, 31 years old, making his debut. He said a number of times, I just need to take a normal sales job or something. And guys like Travis Richards, who's in our rink, and myself, we're like, who run into him in the summertime. They're like, the hell you are? No way. Do not quit. Like, what are you talking about? The coaches, Ben Simon, who we had there, like, what are you talking about? Keep playing. You never know. And so there's a perfect example, and that's kind of a one of a million, but
that's one of the best stories this year of the NHL, right? The kid from the Red Wings, man.
So Jimmy, a couple weeks ago, before you played pro, obviously you were at Lake Superior State, right? Up in northern Michigan, up in the UP. So you're a Jersey kid, and I'll have a follow up to that, but you're a Jersey kid. How do you end up in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, from being on the East Coast of the U.S.? So you couldn't probably find the Upper Peninsula on a map, and didn't even know Michigan probably had an Upper Peninsula before you ever stepped foot on campus. So how do you end up at Lake State?
You know what? I'm 56 years old, right? Born in '68, and back then, if you weren't from Minnesota, Massachusetts, Chicago, or Michigan, they didn't even look at you for hockey. That's why I tell kids to this day, and parents, you just need one person to like you and give you a chance. So going into it was my junior year of high school. Right after that winter season, it was called the Chicago Showcase Tournament. It was a big tournament.
I played in that. I played in that
the biggest one in the country. And we took an all-star team from New Jersey for the first time ever. I went out there, played really well. That's the first time Lake State saw me. And then that summer there was Hockey Night in Boston, which was the other biggest one in the country. And they took it from our area. And I went out, tried out, made it, went up there and ripped it up and finished top 10 scoring with, Roenick, Amonte, McEachran, Hines, all those guys, David, and still nobody. And then Lake State, Frank Anzalone, Jeff Jackson, they took a chance on me, and, the rest is history. I got a great story. And I just thought if you got a scholarship, everybody got a full ride. You know what I mean? I ended up getting a full ride. I didn't know anything about college hockey. I knew Wisconsin had a team, Boston. I wasn't even paying attention. Just a kid playing hockey and baseball, trying to stay out of trouble in Brick, New Jersey, right? So my recruiting visit, I fly from Newark to Detroit, get stuck in a snowstorm, get delayed for 12 hours, take this 6-seater up to the Sioux. I get up to the Sioux with a huge snowstorm. And all I know is that I'm there with Jim Rock and Dean Dixon, who were the captains. They took me around and hung out. And I heard you got free sticks. I'm like, free sticks? I go, I'm coming to Lake State. But nobody else took a chance on me. And, the rest is history. You know what I mean? And then that spring, I got a great story about my draft. So that spring rolls around. I had signed my, a letter of intent in November when you sign those. So I'm going to Lake State.
Mm-hmm.
And then Frank Anzalone called me up right before the draft, 1987 draft. He goes, hey, Jimmy, you're probably going to get drafted. I'm like, what? Wasn't even thinking about that. And at the time, there was 12 rounds in the draft. And I didn't ever told anybody this till years later. I said, I said it to myself, the only team I didn't want to get drafted to was the Devils, because I thought it would have been a charity pick, because nobody from New Jersey ever did what I did.
Right.
And I'll never forget Marshall Johnson called. There was no cell phones or anything back then. Somehow he got my home.
Mm-hmm. I know Marshall Johnson. Yeah,
he got my home phone number. It was 5:15, and he calls me up, calls the house, and I happen to be there. I'm just getting ready to go out to a party, and he calls me up. My dad calls me in. We're playing basketball out front, 2-on-2, and it's Marshall Johnson tells me they drafted me. I said, "Oh, what round?" He said, 8th round. And you know me, Noob. I'm a positive guy, so right off the bat, I'm thinking, "Oh, great! It wasn't the 12th round; it was the 8th." So
yeah. Yeah, I know. I know. And then 8th round back then, there was only like 24
Yeah.
teams, or 21 teams, whatever it was. So it's actually a decent number.
Yeah.
It's so funny because my stuff parallels you a little bit because I did the hockey
so
night
hockey
or the Chicago Showcase, and Jeff Jackson was my coach.
Yep.
And I played Michigan high school hockey, and then I played junior, and all of a sudden they're like, "You're probably going to get drafted." And I was at my brother's high school graduation. We were hosting my high school's my brother's like grad party, in our backyard, and I had to steal his thunder and get drafted by the Red Wings. So same type of thing. You're like, I don't know I'm not getting drafted. Like that's not for me. It doesn't happen to guys here. Yeah. So it's really funny. But funny, I was going to say a couple weeks ago, Jeff Jackson. They did a little ceremony, thing. He's coaching Notre Dame the last 20 years, where my son Cole is. And then, so they did a thing there, brought in a bunch of Lake State guys,
they all called me,
and brought in a ton of players. I'm sure you got the invite.
Oh,
yeah. He had a couple, I would say there was probably 100 guys there.
Yeah. There was a great turnout.
So
great turnout, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess I half expected to see you there, but it was a nice event and really good turnout by the Lake State guys. And people are like, "What's Lake Superior?" But like, from the 87 to about 90, like 85 to 95, like Lake State was, a school that nobody could find on a map, but was a powerhouse when you got down to the national tournament, and we're just there all the time.
Yep.
So, and a couple national championships, a couple guys turned, some guys that had nice NHL careers coming out of there. And so it was a bit of a wagon for a little bit, for a school that did not get much attention for anything else.
No, man. And it's like I said, you're right. From about 85 to 95, Frank Anslo and Jeff Jackson, man, they did an amazing job there. 3 national championships. I mean, and then we finally, like, the first blue chip recruit we ever got was Doug Waite. Normally a guy like Doug Waite would go to Michigan or Michigan State, but we were just coming onto the scene. We won a national championship, and he loved the way Anslo and Jackson were doing things there, the dad and him. And then Jeff Jackson's smartest move he ever made, he hired Ron Ralston as an assistant coach. That's how they got Brian Ralston there.
To get Brian, yeah.
But it was a great time. I loved every second of it up there. My best friends from Muskegon, Michigan, Jeff Naparella, my roommate for 3 years, and my mate. He's scouting with the Islanders now. So, yeah, I love.
Yep.
4 years up there. The Devils tried to get me to sign after my junior year. I went back. It took me 2 seconds to decide to go back. That's another thing. We'll talk about that too. Kids, there's no rush, man. Unless you're going right to the NHL, there's no real rush. You know what I mean? Back then, it's a little different now, but for the most part, you always started in the minors back then,
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's a little different now. I mean, the core groups were a little bit older and you were in the minority, and now the minority are the older guys. The core groups are a lot younger. So hard for a player, you got to go they want you there a little bit younger, but matters is that they get to decide on you quicker, when you're younger. For guys like me, I needed the runway, man. I needed more time. I needed time. I think if I would have gone the major junior route and have to sign at 20, I probably was going to be out of hockey right away,
Wow.
So I need a little bit more time now. There's a little more urgency these days with collective bargaining. They need some younger bodies up there, and it doesn't cost them as much to really invest in a young player as it did back in our day a little bit. We probably helped create a lockout with some of the contracts that were coming out. For guys, guaranteed money for guys that had no guarantee of ever even playing a game. But now it's like the American League is very, very good hockey, and it is extremely hard to be a good player in that league, and you got to be over ready to come in that league. And it's quote unquote developmental league, but it is and it isn't. And you're a prospect, and then that hourglass starts moving pretty quickly in that league, and so the less time you can be floundering around there and being really productive and like when the league's not too big for you, then the better off you're going to be. But it's not a league where you kind of learn how to play hockey. Like you got to hit the ground running when you go there. If you have any chance to get out of there, you got to hit the ground running.
Yeah, and even the East Coast League, man, there's guys going from the East Coast League to the A. And back when we came in, it was literally like slap shot in the East Coast League. Like, I mean, like I said, hockey's growing so much all over the place. There's kids coming from everywhere, and it's just, I don't know, just like the kid from the Red Wings, just keep playing because you love it and just keep working. You never know.
Yeah.
The bottom line.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like it's definitely part of, a lot of like what, how hockey's grown over the years and whatnot. You just see so many guys just kind of coming to the league in so many different ways and everything. And in terms of that, obviously this year was the new team in Utah. Jim, I know you played in Utah a little bit. Can you talk about that and just kind of how that was? I know it was the IHL, but when you heard that Utah was getting a team and just had like experience kind of playing there, was that something that you kind of thought would really, really kind of work?
You know what? Once they built that rink for the Olympics, you knew something was going to come there sooner or
Yeah.
later. It took years,
Yeah.
but they got that rink. They built the hockey rink for the Olympics, and you knew they were going to get NHL team sooner or later. And look what it's doing now. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cool. But it's a great place to live. You know what I mean? It's a great way of life out there. And that's when I had a little blip in my career. Had to get my head out of my rear end, but I got sent back to the minors at 27 years old. You know what I mean? I signed 2 nice contracts, won a Stanley Cup, got sent back to the minors, had to figure out, hey, do I really want to play hockey? And, back then you went to the IHL to die. You were either an older guy making 250, 350, 400, or you were like me, like, what the heck just happened? And I'll never forget Butch Goring's like, Jimmy, man. I said, Butch, what's the fastest way back to the NHL? He goes, Jimmy, American Hockey League. You know what I mean? Calgary's looking for somebody. Would you want to go there? I said, Butch, if you're telling me it's the fastest way back to the NHL, I'll go there. I love Butch Goring. He hooked me up. He got me into Calgary's organization. I went to St. John, got my head out of my rear end, got into nutrition heavily, and then spent the next 12 straight years without a day in the minors. But
Wow.
going back to the original question, Utah's great, man. I loved it there.
Yeah.
You could golf and snowboard within a half hour in the same day.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
If you're feeling ambitious,
they're going to love it there. It's a great place to raise a family too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just out there last month for the Flyers game, and it was sweet. The arena's nice. I think they're building another one in a couple years because the Olympics are coming back. So yeah, I mean, it definitely was awesome atmosphere and whatnot. And I just wanted to circle back a little bit to your time in Philly. A couple weeks ago, we talked to Darian Hatcher, and Mike and Danny were kind of reminiscent on Danny and things like that. We were, Mike and you and Hatch were kind of saying that Danny's kind of more of a thinker and he kind of lets things process and whatnot. Jim, for you, like what was kind of the biggest thing that you remember about Danny B, not only as like a player, but just as a person and a human being as well.
Oh, he was great, man. We were actually stallmates that year, so we sat next to each other
Oh,
the whole
okay.
year in the Flyers
Yeah.
locker room. And to this day, he's just a like you said, he's a really good human being. First of all, he went about his business quietly. He wasn't he's obviously an undersized guy. When he played, there was a lot of beasts and monsters in the league, and he
Yeah.
put his time in too. You know what I mean? He put his time in and turned into an amazing player. But just a guy that showed up every day and was great in practice and just quietly went about his business. And, he had that little chip on his shoulder too. Guys like that needed to have that chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
But he was clutch. He was clutch. And I'm pretty happy for him, when he got the GM job, because again, he put his time in actually in the front office side too. I think he was helping in the East Coast League up in Maine. So
Yep.
he was learning the ropes, putting his time in. And, I'm happy for him. Couldn't, as they say, cliche, but it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. He really is a good guy.
Yeah.
And smart, man. He's a smart hockey guy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's one of the things that like Mike and I we've kind of talked about it all year, just like how patient that some people may have to be with the Flyers and kind of where they're at. It's obviously like I think now you're seeing it where the rebuild is in. This is like the really tough stage where it's like the end of the season. They're clearly not making the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of a hard watch right now, just because of where the team is at. But it's a really good future. I mean, they got 7 picks, like you guys were talking about, with how the American League has changed and whatnot. And Mike, we talked last episode how they added some guys down there and everything, and they got a lot of cap space and everything too. So it's like it seems it's rough right now, but it could be really really change in the next 1 or 2 years here, and they could hopefully. And what I'm hoping they can do is where Danny can kind of have a season, an off season like Paul Holmgren did when he got Marty Briere on, and then he signed Briere and he signed all them guys from 06-07 to 07-08, and that seems like it's going to be either this summer or next summer, kind of going into these next couple of years here, but we'll see.
Yeah, I can't wait till the Flyers get back in the playoffs, man. Because I'm telling you,
Yeah.
I played on 10 teams in 17 years, and that is one of the best places to play hockey in the NHL.
Yeah,
there's a nice fever come playoff time, in the city, and obviously it's been a few years, and it's going to be kind of Danny's time to really make a stamp on the team and, try and, take it to the next level. So, like you said, Chris, some stuff of him has unwound a little bit, contracts and money's freeing up. And so, it's going to be exciting to see what happens, and, get some nice young guys to start. And, it's always hard to pick the pieces to kind of help put the puzzle all together. So, being interesting, be a first real summer where you can kind of have your first crack at it. And again, for every fan out there, it's not going to happen overnight. And you want it to happen, and get it all right the first time. But all that stuff takes time and cycles around. And but it should be exciting off season though, in that respect.
Yeah, for sure. Jim, just one of the last ones here for you. I was looking it up on YouTube earlier. There was a carpet commercial that you were in when you were in Jersey. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I was watching. I was cracking up.
It's a bummer, man. It's one of my good buddies. Just one of my good buddies owns Just Carpets. He just sold the company too. He retired.
Oh, really?
He's great, man. I just hey, Just Carpets and Flooring, man. Hardwood, laminate. We got it all.
Yeah.
That was all you had to say.
A month ago, just sold the business. So one of the largest flooring stores in the East Coast here. But
wow.
I get a lot of mileage out of that too, man. I got some good, business out of that. That was all over on Fox News Channel everywhere.
Yeah.
Wow, you should take a little share. You should take in some percentage there and then held on to it. Yeah. That's not many guys can say they repped a carpet company.
Right?
How many guys in the NHL say they can rep a carpet
everything
company?
had to do revolved around hockey. It was pretty funny, pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
That is
little puns, hockey puns, and fake shooting stuff across their stick handling on their floors. Exactly. Look, Mom, no scratches on the floor. Great flooring here.
Yeah. And then just one last one here for you, Jim, at least for me. Just kind of playing for like so many teams over your career. Like I was always curious, like seeing some guys that just have like the laundry list of on like their hockey DB, where it's just like team after team after team. Like for you, like what is that like? I guess from switching, like earlier we were talking about you went from Jersey to Chicago, Colorado, Philly. Like obviously it's it's not in that order, but when you go through so many of them teams, what is the other side of it like? That's like the human element. Where like as like a fan, like for me, like I'd get so stuck on like, oh, we get this guy on like a different season. But like the human side of it is like, oh, you got to switch cities. And then like, Mike brought up how you were like rooming with, Upshaw or, whatever it was. But like, what's the other side of that where it's like, you got to move everything in such a short amount of time and all that too.
As they say, especially being a college kid, not playing junior hockey, so you're never traded. Your first trade's the toughest one. I'll never forget. It was from the Devils. I got traded furthest team to Vancouver. You know what I mean? And it was December 19th at the Christmas deadline I got traded. That was the toughest one. After that, moving around, it just, you figure it out. The first one's the hardest, but after that, and then you really, when you have a little blip like I did, you realize, man, I just went from the penthouse to the outhouse. The NHL is the best thing. It's the highest level you can go. It's amazing. And once you figure out that that's what you want to do and play as long as you can, it's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean? And I was married at 28. I didn't have kids till I was 32, so the whole kid thing didn't have to worry till later. But I mean, we spent 4 great years in Minnesota. Our kids were grew up there the first few years. Had a great run in Jersey, and a couple 1-year stints, and 2 years here. But it was you get used to it. It's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? It's not, put it this way, it's not a bad problem to have.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's like you said, the first time you feel a little violated, but you're lucky that you played long enough. And I think, Jimmy and I kind of look at it this way: I played long enough, and you make relationships and see towns and see cities that you never would have ever stepped foot in, or spent some time in. You're thankful for that, and that's part of stuff in the career. I mean, it's playing games, and everything comes along with that is fun. But I think you really enjoy yourself when you kind of just get involved, and you just you just say, hey, this is where we're going to be for a couple of years, and appreciate where you are. Great chances to live in great cities. And so you got to, you can look at it a number of ways. It's pain to get traded, or you can look at it like, well, what an opportunity to live in this city. So it depends how you look at it.
And life after hockey now, listen, everywhere we go, we know somebody. Literally 10 teams.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
Everywhere. I played with somebody from every European country all over the North America. But that's another way you got to look at it,
Right. Yeah.
The more people you know in life, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
Well put, Jimmy.
Yeah,
well put.
that is.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I mean, outside of that, Mike, I don't know if you got anything else.
No, I'm looking forward to seeing Jimmy and this weekend.
Nice.
Be up in St. Paul, in a couple days, and kids are all playing against each other. So, hope to see you at the XL there somewhere. Catch up with you.
Hopefully, it's Western Michigan and ASU in the finals, right?
Yeah, it could be. Very well could be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sweet. Jimmy, thanks so much. Really do appreciate you hopping on with us. It's been great. Thanks for everybody again for all the support as always. And we'll talk to you guys all again next week. See you guys.
All right. Thanks, guys. Anytime.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks, buddy.
Bye, Noobs. I'll see you in a couple days.